So there's a line in the book, and I'm just going to read it.
Yeah.
You incinerated huge sums of money on a marketing or branding agency, and all you had to show for it was a shiny new logo and some pretty design. Impact on your revenue, approximately zero. Why do so many business owners, as a result, just kind of have that overarching belief system towards marketing in general?
Peter Drucker famously said the two jobs of any entrepreneur are innovation and marketing. And most entrepreneurs have got the innovation part down. They're really good at product development, making sure the service delivery is really good, all of that sort of thing. But often they're lacking in the marketing component. Marketing is core to your business. And if you're just abdicating the marketing role to somebody external and hoping that they do a great job for you, you're setting them up for failure. And if they're silly enough to take that on, they're also setting themselves up for failure.
You're watching the LeanScaper podcast, where landscapers come to grow. If you want the systems, stories, and strategies to build a lean, mission-driven company that your team loves working for, keep watching. Allan Dib, welcome back to the podcast. It is so good to get a chance to talk to you again. How are you?
Hey, Benji, I'm exceedingly well. Thanks so much for having me back.
So there's a line in the book, and I'm just going to read it.
Yeah.
You incinerated huge sums of money on a marketing or branding agency, and all you had to show for it was a shiny new logo and some pretty design. Impact on your revenue, approximately zero.
Yeah.
And I just copy and pasted that out of the book, which is called Lean Marketing, and everyone should check it out. We'll put something up on screen here so you can see it. Okay, so that sentence is very grabby, obviously. It struck me, as I'm sure it struck a lot of readers.
Yep.
And it's a great explanation of this really prevalent belief system in the small business environment, which is, well, marketing is a waste of money. We tried this, we tried that, we blew through a whole bunch of dough and we got nothing. Why does that sentence in the book, and why do so many business owners, as a result, just kind of have that overarching belief system towards marketing in general?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to wins that you've often had in the business. So, for example, you're struggling with your IT systems or whatever, and you get an IT guy, you outsource all your IT problems go away. You've got HR problems in your business, and you need to get contracts together, whatever. You outsource your HR stuff to a HR person. Boom, your HR problems go away. So it feels logical that, hey, I've got all of these marketing problems, so why don't I get a marketing agency in, outsource all of that, and they'll fix all that. The issue is IT, HR, some of the other operational stuff in your business, they're peripheral to the core of the business, whereas marketing is the core of what you do as a business, right? So Peter Drucker famously said the two jobs of any entrepreneur are innovation and marketing. And most entrepreneurs have got the innovation part down. They're really good at product development, making sure the service delivery is really good, all of that sort of thing. But often they're lacking in the marketing component. So it's kind of making the mistake of mistaking marketing majors and minors. So, the IT, the HR, all of that, they're important things, but they're peripheral to the business. Marketing is core to your business. So I think that's kind of the fundamental core of why people make that mistake, why a lot of agencies don't work for people. I have this conversation with people every single day. It's like, hey, I blew through $20,000, $50,000, $100,000, millions of dollars sometimes, and we got nothing from our agency. And it's not because agencies are evil or they want to fail you or they want to steal your money or anything like that. There is a strategic way to use agencies intelligently to get good results, and we can kind of go into that. But it's because marketing has gotten so much more multifaceted, cross channels, and if you're just abdicating the marketing role to somebody external and hoping that they do a great job for you, you're setting them up for failure. And if they're silly enough to take that on, they're also setting themselves up for failure. So no one will know your business as well as you do. No one will care about your business as much as you do. And so you've got to be in control of the marketing. Doesn't mean you have to press all the buttons and do all the stuff, but the strategy has to be with you. You have to own it and you have to take responsibility for it.
I had someone explain this to me years ago, which was, and they used a good metaphor just coming from the blue collar space. They're like, you need to be the general contractor of your own marketing. You can and should bring in specialists, specialized sub trades to do a bit here or a bit there, but you still firmly have grasp on the project.
Yep.
And I just find that a useful way to think about it. So, okay, so I'm not like a general contractor is going to have a really great design, a really great blueprint, a really good understanding of how each of those things are done. Even if they don't understand the super technical details at a high level, they understand how it connects to the strategy and how it connects to outcomes that they want. And so they're effectively hiring out a graphic design bit here, hiring out a video bit here, hiring out an SEO component there, but they're kind of an assembler. And I think what happens and where the marketing face plants come from is people try and basically outsource the entire endeavor to a generalist or a we do everything style agency and get really, really bad results.
Yeah, totally. I sometimes use the analogy of, like if you're in a relationship, um, kind of outsourcing the role of being nice to your wife or your partner or whatever, and doing all that. That's not going to result in a good relationship. Yes, you can use services that deliver flowers. Yes, you can, do all of those things,
Right.
but it's on you. Yeah, you're the one managing the relationship, and because marketing is such an intimate thing that is weaved all throughout the business. It's not just something we sprinkle on top at the end after we've created the product or whatever. It really has to be at product development stage, at every stage, touching every customer experience. Just like a marriage relationship would be, hey, it's the stuff that you do daily. It's not just the one-off big kind of stuff that you do. It's showing up daily. It's having those conversations daily. It's being good to each other and all of that. So in a similar way, an external agency they just can't do that for you, no matter how much they want to.
And really quickly, would you mind just because I think it will give good context for the rest of the conversation, could you just share a bit about like your actual core business? You've got the books, the one-page marketing plan, lean marketing. People probably know you first and foremost for
Yeah.
those because they're more public facing, but
Yeah.
you actually have a business behind all this that informs this conversation we're about to have. So just shed a little bit of light on that for our listeners.
Yeah, so we run a marketing accelerator. So we've got a program called the Lean Marketing Accelerator, and it's essentially about exactly what we've talked about, is owning and building your own marketing department. Now, again, that doesn't mean doing all the stuff yourself, because I'm a big believer. In fact, I don't do the stuff, right? So, but it's about owning the strategy, getting your messaging right, getting your strategy right, getting all of those things lined up so that you can take control of your marketing. So it's kind of like the opposite of a marketing agency. We don't do the stuff for you. We'll help you build your own marketing department in-house and really own that function. And then where it makes sense, you might bring an external specialist, which could be an agency. You might, let's say we decided, hey, TikTok ads were a really good idea. You might get someone who's a specialist in TikTok ads to come in, do their thing, and then either leave or stay on a performance basis or whatever it is. But the whole point is we want you to become an excellent marketer, own the marketing strategy, have really, really strong messaging. Because once you do that and then you bring in an agency, you're going to be their favorite client. If you go to an agency and say, hey, just make me famous and viral and make me a lot of money, I mean, they're going to slap their head. They may still be silly enough to take it on. But if you go to an agency and say, hey, we've got a super clear picture of who our ideal client is. We've got messaging that we know actually cuts through. We know this kind of media works well. Here's our nurturing process. They'll be like, hallelujah. Like, finally we've got a client that, knows what they're doing and we can help them be successful.
So this conversation is sort of a waste audit. We'll go top, middle, bottom of
Sure.
funnel. Sort of most people are familiar with sort of the funnel metaphor for a
Yeah.
way to think through the stages of awareness to consideration to decision and conversion, all that stuff. But I'll just set it up by saying this way, like this is the LeanScaper podcast brought to you by LeanScaper, the company. We are have built, are implementing an operating system for landscapers based on lean principles.
Mhm.
You've written a book called Lean Marketing, which is all about how to not create so much freaking waste
Yeah.
in your marketing efforts. So this is like a very where there's a lot of synergy here. And I think maybe just to level set before we get into the stages, how do you define marketing waste? Is it dollars wasted? Is it time wasted? Is it attention wasted? Is it opportunity cost? Can you just maybe level set and give us some examples and a definition of marketing waste in your eyes?
Yeah, it's all of those things, but yeah, especially time, money, energy, and really focus. So, um, what led me to write lean marketing is uh, I looked around and even in within our client base, within our own business, and I saw all of the best marketers in the world had a very lean approach, meaning they were not scattered in 20 different directions where they were doing 20 different things kind of in a mediocre way. They were doing one or two things and going really deep and really doing a great job. So in my business, for example, it's my book, it's my email list. We go really, really deep. It generates, both of those things generate millions of dollars of revenue and lead flow into our business. Like literally every single day, my inbox is overflowing with people. Hey, I read the book. Can I join your program? I read your book. I'm interested in certification program. How can you help our business and all of that? And I mean, I've got a sales team of 8 people whose job is essentially following up the inbound lead flow that we get from that. So it's very, very efficient versus if we were doing it the traditional way, which is, hey, we cold call every day, we make 1,000 calls, maybe we get 100 pickups. Out of those 100 pickups, we book 10 appointments. Out of those 10 appointments, we've got maybe 2 conversions or whatever. And that's okay. That's a fine way to do it in the beginning, but it's very, very labor intensive. It's soul crushing. It takes a lot of time, money, energy. And it's very inefficient because we're burning like 98% of the leads on our list with essentially spam. So if you can create an efficient lead flow system where people say, hey, you created a lot of value for me already somehow, whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast, whether it's content some other way, and hey, I'm interested in what you've got. Tell me more about it. That's so much more efficient than just having to hunt and burn a lot of goodwill and time, money, and energy.
So your sounds pretty clear. Triple down on a couple winning channels and
Yep.
avoid the tendency to spread ourselves too thin.
Yeah, yeah. So if you think of, we all have finite resources, and those resources are time, money, energy, right? So you've got a certain amount of money that you can spend on marketing. If you spread that in 10 different directions, well, maybe we can only go so far in 10 directions. But if we focus on one direction, we can go much further. Same with your focus and energy. If you're like, often I'll say to an entrepreneur, what are your top marketing priorities? And they'll list 100 different initiatives. And I'm like, the definition of a priority is like it's one or two things really, and it's really probably one major thing. And let's really do an incredible job with that. And then add another channel, which literally I'm doing now. Like after I think we've been in business like 8 years doing what we're doing now, we haven't essentially touched channels like YouTube and Instagram and all that for us. We're just now, like literally this week, we've hired a full-time videographer, and I'm like, all right, we've done really, really well with book. We've done really, really well with email. We've gone deep. They generate millions of dollars of revenue. Let's look at YouTube and Instagram next. So, and I'm a professional marketer, and I haven't basically, other than maybe photos of my dog and other things like that, I really haven't messed around with Instagram, with YouTube, and those are important channels as well. So, because if I can focus on book and email list and do those at a world-class level, I know I'm going to do better than if I spread myself across 20 different channels and do them in a mediocre way.
So I know I'm lingering on this, but I find it really interesting because I personally struggle with this all the time. Just the tendency to add a few more channels
Yeah.
and think that I can get. I'm doing literally Q4 planning right now and looking at an onslaught of things that on paper I'm meant to do, and I'm humbled, going, I honestly think I can probably get 3 of these done, and even that's a stretch.
Totally.
And it's where does the tendency to just spread ourselves too thin come from? If it's so obvious that it's better to just push a few things forward and drive excellence on a finite amount of channels or strategies, where does the tendency for us to sort of take on a billion things come from?
The it comes from the entrepreneurial type. The entrepreneurial type is someone who really thrives on novelty. I'm the first one. I'll put my hand up there, and I've got to fight every instinct I've got to not play, and follow bright, shiny objects and do all of those things because I know what it's going to do for my business, right? So we thrive on novelty, but we actually succeed by just doing the daily, weekly, boring stuff. I saw a tweet the other day which really encapsulated this very well. It said, woodwork sounds like a really cool hobby until you realize it's 90% sanding. So,
Yeah.
so you know, doing the one thing daily, weekly, monthly, it's 90% sanding. It's not sexy, it's not fun, it's not you're not having shiny new toys, but it really is the path to compound interest. It's kind of like very similar to investing. So if I spread myself too thin, I tried a little bit of crypto, a little bit of gold, a little bit of property, a little bit like I'm not going to get anywhere with any of those. Whereas compound interest, I just do the boring thing. I just put it into an ETF every week as the same amount, or every month, or whatever it is else. It compounds, it grows, and then like, whoa, you've got this hockey stick over time, and you just showed up and just did the boring thing. You didn't have to do the crazy crypto thing. You didn't have to do any weird investments or whatever. You just showed up and put the money in, and it did its thing.
I think there's another dimension to it too that I've been thinking about a lot lately is in the modern like content universe. And look, you and I are chief culprits on this, just putting all this stuff out there into the world. When everybody is on 10 different podcasts, reading 100 business books a year, and now getting shorts and clips and reels, it's really, really hard to not be always injecting a new recipe into the mix.
Yeah.
And I think it takes either a huge amount of maturity because you've learned the lesson the hard way, or a huge amount of discipline to keep that shiny object syndrome at bay, or some combination of the two to kind of stick to a couple. And I love what you said. We did a book really well. We've done a newsletter really well. 8 years later, we're gonna start to dabble with YouTube. It's like that is a winning formula. It's just it's easier said than done. So I want to do a little funnel audit, marketing funnel audit. You're even if you're not a landscaper per se, I know you've worked with enough service companies to understand the architecture of how these businesses get and convert leads to speak to this pretty clearly. So let's start at like the top of the funnel. I'll give you a bit of my best definition. I was writing some stuff down, and I want you to backfill anything I miss, and then I'll get to the questions. This is just maybe for our newer, more novice level marketers listening. So when we talk about top funnel, guys, this is where a landscaping company makes homeowners or property managers aware of their services. It's all about generating attention and interest through channels like SEO, Google Ads, yard signs, social media, project photos. That's not an exhaustive list, by the way. It's just a few things. And the goal is simply do enough of the right people know we exist.
Yeah.
How do you like that definition, Alan?
Yeah, I love it. I think it makes sense. It's really about having your ideal target market know you, like you, and trust you. So yeah, I think it's spot on there.
Okay. Now, landscapers often spend a lot on SEO, ads, on social. Where do you see, in broad strokes, the biggest waste crop up at this awareness stage with smaller service businesses?
The biggest waste is interruption style marketing. So marketing that's like cold calling, marketing that's like, ads that are kind of intrusive and waste people's time, and like spammy kind of stuff. Because people will tell you it's a numbers game. If we send enough of them, some of them will go through, and maybe that's true. But it's hugely wasteful. You're going to burn a ton of money, but most importantly, you're going to burn a ton of goodwill. So I mean, every single day I get so much spam with people reaching out saying, hey, that I'll do your video, I'll do your this, I'll do your whatever. And most of it I pay zero attention to. Now, what's an efficient way to get attention? An efficient way to get attention is by creating value up front. So I don't know if you've ever heard of an economic principle, like, for example, pollution. It's called an externality, right?
Hmm.
So a factory, you're manufacturing something and there's pollution coming out of the smokestack, it's going into the community. That's a negative externality. So you're creating value for yourself, but you're putting all this pollution out into the air and the community suffers. Maybe they have health issues or whatever. And so I feel like a lot of advertising is that it's putting pollution out there, and it's not creating value for anyone and it's costing a lot of money. Um, Conversely, there's positive externalities. So a positive externality is where you create a lot of value. So using an example from my own life, one of my neighbor, I live high on a hill, and one of my neighbors just behind me spends hours and hours and hours in their garden doing gardening, weeding. They've got a beautiful fountain and all of that sort of thing. And I sit on my balcony and I appreciate that garden and I take it in. But it didn't cost me anything. The cost was purely on the neighbor, that they maintain it, they pay for it, all of that. But it still elevates the neighborhood. So that's a positive externality. So that's the kind of marketing that I want to do, where, hey, we create a ton of great content. People love it. And whether they buy from you or not, you're creating goodwill, because goodwill is something that is actually monetizable, either now or down the track when you decide to sell your business. Like, literally, when you sell a business, a line item on the balance sheet is goodwill. So it's the amount someone paid for your business over and above the inventory and over and above the plant and equipment.
Is there a reason for a landscaper that more interruption style marketing does not work? Because I assume that does work for other businesses with a different type of product. Is there something that makes that style of awareness marketing ineffective for this type of service?
Look, I think it can work. I mean, if you land in someone's inbox or whatever at the exact right time that they're trying to do landscaping or whatever, maybe that can work. But for the most part, landscaping is something that you would do. A big landscaping project, like I when I built my current house, I spent over $250,000 on landscaping. And had you by chance landed in my inbox the very couple of weeks that I was assessing different landscaping contractors, yeah, maybe we would have had a conversation or whatever. But the chances of you doing that are pretty infinitesimal. So a better approach is someone who's, hey, showing up, creating really cool content, and someone I'm already following, someone I've already got trust in. They're showing me their process. They're showing me some of their work. They're someone in the local area that I've seen do other jobs and things like that. Well, now we've got know, like, and trust, and so you're far, far ahead of just some random person just interrupting my day and saying, "Hey, do you need landscaping?"
For smaller, hyper local businesses, in other words, these are not online businesses that can service customers all over the world. They can service customers in a certain postal code. There's a radius. Are there certain, when you say I want to create value, make really really cool content, stop trying to just get in the inbox on the exact right day? Are there things that you sort of lean towards, tactics, strategies, channels, content types that you kind of lean towards for this type of business owner?
Definitely. I think it's so much easier for someone who has a local area, because if you're trying to dominate landscaping across, nationally or whatever, you're going to have a ton of competition, and it's going to be very, very hard. But I think to do, for example, Instagram Reels or Instagram posts or whatever in a local area, it's pretty easy to do, and you're going to have very low competition, because almost no local businesses really do content very well. And you don't need to kind of go crazy and have a super professional setup or whatever. If you just show your work, like, it's literally just show your work, and what you do as a landscaper is very, very visual. Like, uh,
Super.
yeah, I mean, you've got a huge advantage there. I mean, imagine, like, as a service business, what we sell is invisible. So it's way, way harder to try and explain what we do, how we do it, how we work with people, and all of that. And I wish sometimes I had something just visual that I could just show, but most of the time it's me talking, or, we're trying to put some content together or whatever. But as a landscaper, literally, your job is the visual aspect of what you do. So basically it's show up, do your work, and just show your work. Just, with every job, you're taking out your phone, you're doing stories, you're doing reels and things like that. And because it's local, it's going to be a lot easier to get into people's local feeds.
So you mentioned that that economic. What was the principle? What do you like when you're creating extra pollution that's not needed?
Yeah, it's called an externality.
An externality.
Yeah, an
Okay.
externality is basically an economic side effect of something. So, and most of the time it's negative, like pollution, but sometimes it can be positive, like, the beautiful garden, like content that creates a lot of goodwill.
Well, one thing, one externality that definitely is negative, but it sort of seems positive at first, is what I would just call broadly vanity metrics. You're paying for likes and clicks and impressions and what would be your advice for business owners to really cut through the tendency to pay for those and begin paying for metrics that matter, which is a form fill, which is a booked estimate, which is a closed job. These are business results that we can track in our CRM. These are not just sort of Facebook results that our agency is trying to tell us are showing progress. And I know that's a very, very felt experience for a lot of our listeners, where it's like, hey man, I can't take the 6,000 impressions you got us to the bank next
Yeah,
week, and I really need to make payroll.
yeah,
So any thoughts on kind of cutting through vanity metrics?
yeah. So there's only, when it comes to marketing, there's a billion different metrics we can measure, but there's really only two that matter. And so the only two that really, really matter are cost of customer acquisition, sometimes called CAC, and the other one is LTV, lifetime value. So CAC is how much did it cost us to acquire a customer? And LTV is what's the lifetime value of our average customer. So, for example, in a LeanScaper scenario, let's say you spent $100,000 on your marketing. That might be your marketing person. That might be some ads. That may be maybe someone to shoot content or whatever it is. Like I'm just using round numbers here, and let's say out of that, you got 100 clients through the year. So your cost of customer acquisition is $1,000. So we know on average, and it's going to vary from client to client. Some jobs will be big, some jobs will be small, and you might even segment this by types of jobs and things like that. So if you want to get a little bit more sophisticated, maybe, if you're just doing small little mowing things or whatever, that's one segment, and then huge landscaping jobs is another segment. So but here, just for the sake of simplicity, we'll call it $1,000 to acquire a customer. Now, you know that your lifetime value has to be over $1,000. So lifetime value might be the initial landscape that you do or whatever, and then maybe ongoing maintenance or whatever that you have. So they're the two numbers that really matter most above all else. Everything else is just helping you troubleshoot to get to those numbers. So if those numbers are out of whack, so if our lifetime value is too low or if our cost of customer acquisition is too high, then we'll go back and we use different metrics to kind of troubleshoot. We say, okay, how many impressions did we get? Of those impressions, how many clicked through to the landing page? Of those who clicked on the landing page, how many filled in the form? And so then we can use those metrics to kind of troubleshoot our campaigns to say, looks like people are landing on the landing page, but they're not filling the form. What's wrong with the landing page? Is it too confusing? Is it does it format weirdly or whatever it is? But those metrics are really only a means to an end. The core metrics that I want you to care about, if I wake you up at 3 in the morning and ask you, hey, what's your CAC? What's your LTV? You know those numbers.
I love this whole idea because one, it's very lean, and two, it's very timely in the sense that in today's business climate, we're all told about data and dashboards and that's true. But the truth is, I actually think that we're over rotating on that to some degree, where we have dashboards that are so many tabs long and have so many cells that it's actually more noise than signal. And the way you just put it is really helpful, because it's like, no, there's actually only two fundamental. There's like, these are the king of KPIs. It's
Yes.
CAC and it's LTV.
Yep.
Now, if one of those two things or both of those things are way off from where they need to be, we can then double click in, and then we can look at conversion on the landing page, and then we can look at impressions, and we can look at cost per earn view, and we can get really, but the problem is a lot of us look at too much data all the time because we think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and we actually confuse ourselves worse than had we just been almost data blind in the first place. So I love distilling it down to something really, really simple. CAC and LTV, begin there, and then everything else gets a lot easier when you clear on those.
Totally.
Let's look at the middle of funnel. Okay, so my definition of this is at this stage, prospects are already aware of the LeanScaper, but they're deciding if they should engage further. Marketing nurtures them with content, case studies, reviews, email or text campaigns, or free resources. And the goal is to move them from curiosity to a first step of engagement. That could be filling out a form, it could be downloading a guide, or it could be requesting an estimate. Um, Middle of funnel, anything else to add that's sort of important for people just to frame up this section when we think about what's happening at the middle of our marketing funnels?
Yeah. So middle of marketing funnel, this is really one of the most neglected areas of all. People, this is your opportunity to wow someone when they're kind of warm or even hot. And most people just do a terrible job with this. I'll give, again, using my own life as an example, hiring a landscaper. So like I said, I spent over $250,000 on landscaping. I had 3 guys come in and do an estimate. First guy comes in smelling of alcohol, says, I don't know, this is too difficult, this is hard, this is whatever, I'll get back to you, whatever. Never heard from him again. Next guy kind of scribbles a bunch of stuff on what looked like the back of an envelope or a, handwritten thing. Again, looking very, very sloppy. And didn't fill me with confidence. Third guy comes in, he's in uniform. He sits down with me and my wife, takes us through he takes us through what's important to you guys. Okay, we've got a dog. Well, what's going to happen with the dog when there's no fence and you're doing all of this work? No problem. We're going to build a pen for your dog right there, and there'll be some temporary fencing, and it'll be all no problem. We'll take care of it. We make sure that our crew don't drink, don't smoke, don't swear on site, or we all come in uniform. We're going to bring our own toilets and things like that, so we don't have to bother you guys while we're constructing all of this sort of stuff. And yet he leaves. And my wife goes, that one, and he was literally twice the price of everybody else. But, him being able to come in, wow us, listen to what was important to us, and really take us through the whole process and allay our fears, and our fears maybe seem dumb to some people. Like, is the dog going to run out and get hit by a car? Is what's going to happen with, while they're doing this, is, all of that sort of stuff. So just being able to take us through that whole process, lay it all out in a professional looking proposal. Well, there was basically zero competition there for him.
A lot of small business owners spend a ton of money on lead generation of some form, and they'd have various channels that work for them. This question doesn't matter where you get your leads from, because it's going to be felt cross channel.
Yep.
You pay a bunch of money to get leads, and then they never pick up, they never answer, they never get back to you. You don't ever schedule it, and it's not uncommon to have marketing funnels where you're burning 25%, 30%. I've seen as high as 50% of the leads you're paying for go unestimated forever.
Yeah.
Why does that happen so often, and what's the fix?
Well, I mean, I'm less interested in why that happens. I mean, why it happens is because a lot of the people running these kind of businesses are not really entrepreneurs. They're just somebody who's a technician who happened to be working for somebody else as a landscaper, then decided, hey, why don't I do it myself? And they're still got the mind of a technician, not of an entrepreneur. So they're not running a landscaping business. They're just a landscaping contractor who happens to be just maybe going direct to the customer. And so I think that's part of it. But the bigger opportunity is that understanding that the bar is so low, particularly in trades. I talk to people in trades all the time, and I say, look, the bar is so low. If you can just pick up the phone, show up in a reasonable amount of time, show up on time, don't mess up the person's house, and just do a good job, you are already in the top percentile of your trade, right? And you'll get referrals, you'll get paid on time, people will love working with you. So the bar in trades is really, really low. So if you can just do the basic stuff, and if you're running late or whatever, just text and say, hey, I'm running late or whatever, and I'll be there at this time. So uh, it's really, really not that difficult. Just, I call it doing the common things uncommonly well. So you don't have to kind of do some mind-blowing thing and, blow people out of the water with that. It's just do the common things uncommonly well.
One of the concepts that I think is slept on by entrepreneurs when it comes to capturing more of their lead flow and turning that into actual like sales appointments is some semblance of a nurture system. And
Yep.
so the concept of nurture, maybe you can define this for us, but in my mind, it's you have people that have expressed interest in your service at some point, and you are doing a job. You're doing a job through email or text to keep your service front of mind. And there's a few different types of nurture. You can have like a long-term nurture sequence, which is someone that opted in or clicked
Hmm.
on an ad or downloaded a thing a year ago, and you're just emailing them once every couple weeks with, various forms of value. And then there's more of a short-term nurture, which is, hey, somebody has said, I would like to get an estimate from this landscaping company. And the nurture is designed for that between that moment in time and the estimate actually happening. And so it's that more short-term nurture I'm more curious in. The goal is to increase the percentage of people that show up to appointments so that you have an opportunity to sell to them. Let's be honest, that's what you're trying to do. What do you think are the best channels? Do you like SMS? Do you like email? And then what type of content do we want to be including if we're building out a short-term nurture, if our goal is to increase the number of people who show up to estimates?
Yeah, I'm gonna make this super easy and super actionable. So, particularly in a local area where, and landscapers are often dealing with high ticket prices. If you just did something as simple as a handwritten note, like let's say you've made an appointment to see Mr. and Mrs. Jones in a week time, I would just send them a handwritten note in the mail saying, "It was so good speaking to you on the phone. I'm really excited about talking to you about your new garden, all of that sort of stuff." And also include in, here's a lookbook of some of the past landscapes that we've done in your area that I think you'll enjoy. I mean, nobody does this. Like, and what would that cost you to send a handwritten note and a little booklet of some beautiful photographs of some of your past work? Because I never want to show up to a sales appointment where I'm selling and the prospect is like, okay, who are you? What do you do? How much does it cost or whatever? Because you're really on the back foot there. I want to show up to a sales appointment where people are like, wow, I've seen your work already. I love what you do. All right, how do we work together? That's, you're going to be working at a much higher level. And so, I have that right now in my business. People will have read one of my books, maybe all of my books, maybe they've heard me on a podcast, maybe they've seen me speak or whatever, and they're getting on a call with one of my team members, and it's not like, okay, what is this about? Tell me what this is and all of that. They already know what it's about. They already agree with it. They already up for whatever we've got. And then it's a matter of just figuring out, is the timing right? Is the pricing right? All of that sort of thing. So in a similar way, you never want to show up to an appointment where you're like having to explain how good you are or introduce yourself or introduce your product or service or whatever. I want to show up where someone already knows, they're kind of warm. They've seen some of the stuff, they like it, and now we're just talking really terms and pricing and things like that. So it would be so easy. I mean, yes, absolutely SMS, absolutely email, but I think for a local business like that with high ticket values, literally it's just a handwritten note. Someone in your office whose job it is just to send leads, handwritten notes, and maybe some case studies of your work in the area, some photos of your work in the area. Like, you will be in a category of one. Almost nobody does this.
I would say if you can, through your through whatever tool you're using, if it can automate this, great. If you need to do it manually, do it manually. But if you can get a calendar invite in an actual calendar, like a Google, attached to a Gmail or a Outlook that they actually use, and if you can send them a 3 email or a 3 text drip on the days going towards it, one with a picture and a face and a name and a message saying looking forward to the appointment, one saying here's some work we've done before, and a third saying here's what you can expect at the consultation, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You will literally double your show up rate almost overnight.
100%.
And most of that, if you're using good tools, most of that can be completely automated. Um, let's talk about bottom of funnel for a second. So marketing's job here is to remove friction and ensure that the lead books an estimate. We talked about that a bit. This is where ad dollars, landing pages, and automations either succeed or go to waste. The focus is on making sure the prospect confidently books a meeting, and then, this is really important, supporting the sales team with content and tactics to help them close. Are you happy with that definition? Did I miss anything?
I am happy with that. Yeah, I think that's great. I think
Okay.
you nailed it.
If you were auditing the bottom of funnel marketing systems for a landscaper, what's the very first friction point that you would eliminate to increase the likelihood that people close?
With everything that we do, we want to see, can we beat the control? So if we say, okay, on average, whenever we have a sales appointment, we close 30% of them or 40% of them or whatever else. How can we beat that? So one of the things that we do is we regularly review sales calls, right? So what are the most common objections? What are the things that keep coming up over and over? And you will see in every business there are patterns. So for a landscaper, it could be, how long is the job going to take? Is it going to mess up my house while I'm in there? Can I stay in the house? What about my pets? What about my dog? What about my neighbors? What about, whatever, right? So there'll be a ton of different objections. So if you can address some of that prior to your sales appointment, where you can say, hey, here are some of the most common questions that we get. What are we going to do with pets? What are we going, all of that sort of stuff that I outlined. So then you're not wasting the sales appointment on answering all of the same questions that come up over and over and over. You've already answered it. Maybe you might need to kind of just clarify a few things and verify whatever. But I want to come to a sales appointment where people really know what they're going to get, how we're going to address some of those objections. So if your content can address some of those objections, then that's going to be really, really powerful. I'll give you an example from my own business. A lot of times, one of the people on my sales team will be on a call with a prospect, and they ask a question around something. It could be around lead flow, it could be around how to do this. A lot of times, my team will send them a piece of content that I've created either on my podcast or another podcast or whatever. They'll say, hey, that's actually a great question. Allan addressed this on episode 133 of the Lean Marketing Podcast. I'll shoot you a link. So then they're able to kind of address the objections and address the things that someone's concerned about. And they know that we've kind of thought this through. We're not just winging it. We're not just showing up and flying off the seat of our pants. Like it's, we've got a process. We're organized, where we know what we're doing, and we're going to take you through a process that we know works.
That is our friend Marcus Sheridan calls that assignment selling, and I think it's I think for this specific kind of business owner, it is one of the most effective ways to boost all of your bottom of funnel sort of metrics that you would track: conversion rate, average deal size, blah blah blah. And the concept, you alluded to it, but I'll just say this very plainly, is you make content. So predominantly, a lot of it is going to be video, but some of it could be sort of articles or blogs or some white papers too. But video is easy, so I like video. You make content that answers the questions you get all of the time in
Right.
sales meetings, and then you give those pieces of content to your sales team in maybe a little organized folder. So it's like, hey, when we have questions about quality, you go to this stuff; longevity, you go to this stuff; warranty, you go to this stuff; price objections, you go here. And you just make it really easy for your salespeople to disseminate this stuff to customers. And it could be sent either before the meeting because it came up on the setup call. It could be sent out after the meeting because it came out during the actual estimate. But you can save yourself a whole bunch of time repeating the same questions and look incredibly professional because it's like, no, no, Mr. Customer, I don't actually have to like skate my way through an answer on this. We get it so often. We've addressed it so often. We've actually made a video for it. So here you go, watch this. And it's just I've done it enough to know how incredibly effective it is for a service provider and their close rates. On that note, one of my last questions about this bottom of funnel section is when we think about assets to go and make for a landscaping business, like what are your, I don't know, 2 to 5 absolute slam dunk, go make this asset, go make this video, go shoot this testimonial. What are the things that almost always work and almost always provide an ROI in your mind?
Yeah, I think going back to what we talked about earlier, because it's so visual, you really need some good visual assets. If landscape business aside, if I was starting any new business right now, I would be one of my very first hires, and it's going to sound weird, would be a videographer. So it would be, and I think for anyone visual, and it doesn't have to be someone who's full time on your team or whatever, but I would have someone who can shoot some beautiful footage of my stuff, both video, both still, so that I can use that in on my website. I can use that in my Instagram. I can use that in various places. But and the other part of it is, so number one, it's about the visuals, but almost anyone can replicate that. But the second part of it would be the personal brand. I really feel like right now is like it's kind of like 2008 for SEO. It's like early for personal brand. So if you can be the face of the business where you show up in a trustworthy manner, like you're maybe taking someone through a garden that you've done, you're in uniform, you're looking professional, you're explaining everything. You're like, all right, cool. We did this beautiful water feature here, then we installed these shrubs, then we did these watering systems so that no one ever has to worry about watering it and the plants dying, all of that. If you can just do one of those for every job that you do, put that online and create a body of work, not only are you showing your work, but you're showing yourself, your own personal brand, and owning your own kind of personal brand in your local area is super powerful. Like, where I live, it's a pretty affluent neighborhood, but like I know there's like one realtor who really goes deep on personal brand. There's one interior designer who goes deep on personal brand. There's really only, and they essentially dominate that market, and everybody else in that market is kind of getting scraps because they haven't bothered with that stuff. So they're the kind of like the default go-to person. They charge the premium pricing. They're always booked out months in advance if you need anything. So if you can be that person who really dominates the personal brand in your local neighborhood, and you don't have to be a Gary Vee or an Alex Hormozy or a Grant Cardone because they're kind of got a global audience. You just want to dominate your neighborhood, and that's going to be so much easier to do because you've got almost zero competition. Like almost no one is doing it.
It's the 2008 for personal brand.
It really
That's
is.
it is like the wave is just starting to crest and you are starting to see some early winners in almost every vertical and industry. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm very, very bullish on that for our audience. Okay, let's close here. What if you could give landscapers 3 rules to start eliminating waste in their marketing and beyond? What would those rules to follow be?
So, as we said, personal brand. Second thing is with anything that you do from a marketing perspective, is just look, is this going to create value for someone even if they never buy? It's kind of a different mindset versus, hey, I want to acquire a client. And of course, we want to acquire clients. Of course, we want to get more revenue, more sales, and things like that. But if you can do it by creating goodwill, that's going to create referrals from people who aren't even clients. If someone may not even be a client of yours, but they see your content, and then their friend wants to get a landscape or whatever. You say, "Hey, have you seen so and so's content?" Like so creating that personal brand is number one. Number two is really that positive externality. Can you really create a positive goodwill with all the content that you create? And the final thing is really thinking of yourself as a marketer, not a landscaper. So you're a marketer of landscaping services. You're not a landscaper. So the key difference comes down to, what we talked about earlier is, why don't some of the people pick up the phone? Why don't they do all of that sort of stuff? Because they're not marketers. They're landscapers. And so what we need to do is have a mindset shift. We want to be marketers of landscaping services, and that's going to be a monumental shift for you and your business.
Allan, you're a wealth of knowledge as always. Where can people connect with you if people were interested in checking out your accelerator, your books? Like, what's the best place to do all that?
Sure. We're at leanmarketing.com, and you can grab a free copy of the one-page marketing plan canvas there. My book is the one-page marketing plan, and also Lean Marketing, which is where books are sold, and they're both very popular on Audible. So if you prefer listening rather than reading, you can get both my books on Audible.
Huge fan of yours. Thank you so much for the time, Allan. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, man.
Bye.